Okay, for the graph exam on Unit 3, it's going to be a lot of fiscal policy, long-run adjustment, and a couple review items. Okay, once again, aggregate demand, we have our SIG-X, and anytime you need to, just pause so you can fill yours out or, go back, review anything you need to. So we got SIG-X for aggregate demand, and then we have PIG for short-run aggregate supply, productivity inputs, inflationary expectations, government action, which is taxes, subsidy, and regulations. And let me zoom in on that part so you can see it a little bit better. Okay. Now, a couple of things that we covered whenever it came to the short run and long run, that in the classical model, remember, prices and wages were always flexible, and that's going to end up being proven wrong because we have the short run equilibriums where prices and wages are sticky. Just remember menu costs, workers not willing to adjust wages in short run situations. In the long run, though, those prices and wages are flexible, and that's what's going to lead to our long run adjustments. And what we did in section 3.9, also in the short run equilibrium, if there's no policy action, which is this again stuff leading to our long run adjustments, businesses and workers are going to make the self adjustments, and think of them as short run aggregate supply. Okay, because that's going to have to do with prices of businesses and the workers and their wages. So if there's no policy action taken, we have these automatic stabilizers, which was section 3.9 in Unit 3, and those are going to be taxes and transfers. And transfer payments is another way to say it. So transfer payments are things like unemployment benefits, any kind of government assistance during a recession. And when it comes to those taxes and transfer payments, those stabilizers are going to be things in the economy. So for example, taxes, and this should be red for contractionary, but it's kind of pink, taxes are going to stave off some of this inflation that's going to happen at the top of the business cycle. And unemployment benefits at the bottom of the business cycle will keep us from having to do any kind of policy. Okay, so these things are already set in place. So it's almost like a green or an expansionary policy because this is legislation that has already been passed and already in the system. That's why it's called automatic, so it can kick in. All right, over here your multipliers are, remember we got MPC plus MPS, marginal propensity to consume, marginal propensity to save, and you add those two things together because you have two choices: spend your money or save it, and that's going to make 100% of your income. And you're going to use those two because you usually get one inside of a question, and then that way you can solve for the other. So the investment or spending multiplier is 1 divided by MPS, and if you don't have MPS, you can always go 1 over 1 minus MPC to solve for that if you get MPC in the question. If it's a tax situation, remember if taxes are raised, that is a negative for people. So if people are sad because they're taxed, they don't spend as more, so we'll pull spending out of the economy. If taxes are lowered, that's a positive. So this is a negative multiplier, and this is a positive multiplier because if taxes are lowered, it's positive for people. So that's going to be a positive tax multiplier. So taking all those things as kind of a review, I want you to draw aggregate supply and demand at full employment equilibrium, then have all your labels. And then for this one, we're going to have a positive aggregate demand shock and the long run adjustment. So our positive aggregate demand shock is going to be something that shifts this to the right and becomes aggregate demand 1. Now when this happens, it's going to put us into an inflationary gap, and it's going to be price level 1. That inflationary gap is going to be to the right of full employment, and we'll call that one Y1 also. So when we're in this inflationary gap, businesses are doing well, there's a lot of demand, people want their stuff, and right now in this short run equilibrium, prices and wages are sticky, so we're going to be stuck here for a little bit. Now, once workers start to realize that prices around them are going up, they're going to go in and they're going to ask for a raise, aren't they? When they go in and ask for those raises, that is going to put us into a long run adjustment. Workers want those wages, so we have our initial aggregate demand shift to the right, and then as the workers in the economy see the high prices everywhere, they're going to go in and ask for wages. People are going to slow down their spending, and supply is going to shift back to the left, and that's going to put us all the way to a second price level and end up pushing us back to long run equilibrium. So if we have a positive aggregate demand shock, it sends us into an inflationary gap. In the long run, prices and wages will adjust, and then inflation will be pulled back down to long run aggregate supply. Now, if we have a negative aggregate demand shock, it would be the opposite. It's going to send us into a recession. So that negative aggregate demand shock means people aren't buying stuff anymore, are they? So that's going to put us in the short run equilibrium to the left of full employment. It's going to drop prices when no one's wanting to buy things. And now businesses are going to have to adjust to that also. So in the long run, prices and wages are going to be flexible, but in the short run, they are sticky. So we get aggregate supply, short run aggregate supply is going to shift back to the right. So as demand is decreased and workers aren't making any money and we have unemployment, so that unemployment, people are going to be adjustable with their wages. They're going to say, well, I'll come back to work for a lower wage, and then the businesses will be able to pay fewer wages, and that allows them to increase production back to those levels. But we're going to settle in to a different price level or a lower price level, but unemployment would decrease and prices would decrease as well.